All right, so today I want to go over more stuff with the rooms. Obviously, my scene is a lot bigger, so I'm just going to kind of focus in on one area for what I go over today. I'm going to separate this. If at any point you've ever combined a bunch of stuff together, going to mesh and saying separate will separate everything. Okay, and they're all kind of like separated. So like combine, separate, they're like in the same brackety area. Same thing with these, like remeshing things, conforming, filling holes, smoothing, that kind of stuff. These are together, so separated, or it's organized nice and neat. So just for this here, let me grab all these pieces and I'm going to isolate it. Okay, so one of the things we talked about before was laying out UVs for this. So if you look in the hallways, you'll see for these specific areas, there's a stripe of blue that goes down the middle of it, okay? For each one of these, like, bricks, it's like beige bricks, blue stripes, and then beige again. So it doesn't matter how many objects you have with this. I could grab all of my objects at once and do it, or just, you know, these few. It doesn't matter. So I'm going to switch to one of my side views here, and I just want to put a dividing line right down the middle so it's easier to isolate exactly where that blue line is at. So I'm going to go to my multi-cut. I'm going to click here, hold shift, drag it. What are you doing? Hold on. Maya's still thinking. Let's try that again. Side view, yes. Multi-cut. There it goes. Front view. All right, it's not liking something. What are you not liking? Oh, it wants me to do all of, or one at a time. Fine. This is a new thing apparently to Maya 2018, 2017, and no problem with this. So I will recombine them. And then I will go back to my split, and then I will split this straight like that. Okay, and that just splits it literally straight down the middle of whatever I had selected. It missed those, so I'm going to hit undo. Make sure I have everything selected. Try one of these again and see. Okay, so it didn't go. The reason it's probably not going is if I switch back to my front view, remember when we zoomed way out, we made our scene huge, we zoomed way out, part of our scene was getting cut off, right? And we adjusted that clipping plane. Well, the front view has that also. The front view is basically it's clipping the back of it. We can't see it, so it's not drawing it. So I'm just going to add another 0 to that far clipping plane here. Maybe an extra 0 too. Just 2 extra zeros just to be safe. Then I'll go through and draw this. And I'm 90% sure that worked. Yep, that worked. Okay. So it doesn't always happen, but it obviously did here. And then I can grab the lines if I need to. I can scale them down. I can move them. They're about here. Okay. So that's about where it's at. If I need to move it down, I think maybe a little bit more. Let's see, I'm walking down the hallway. Where am I hallway at? Right here. There we go. It doesn't have to be exact. Obviously, it's just representational. Okay. So now let's lay out the UVs for something like this. So what would you typically start with? Right, we go to the UV editor. Okay, they're going to be a mess because they're all just kind of stacked on top of each other. All right, so this is how I attack doing something like this. Imagine that we had a cube, or a cube without a top and a bottom, right? So it's just like the shell of it. What would that look like flattened out? Just like that, right? Just like a plane, basically. So it's essentially what we have, except we have a very intricate cube with no top and no bottom. So basically, this should be one long sheet, and all the edges would be connected except for the two sides of it, okay, somewhere along the line. So just so you can see what it's going to look like as a cube, I'll just make a cube real quick and make this huge. There we go. All right, so if I take this and I do automatic mapping, And then I go to my edges and I sew these edges together, and I sew those edges together. I'll move that out of the way so I can see the other one. And I sew that edge together. That's what that's going to look like flat. Now imagine that this had a lot more 90-degree angles. It would just look like that, except a lot longer. Okay? So I'm going to take all of my pieces here, do an automatic map on it. Now if I go into the UV editor, this is a lot of stuff to have to sew together. Okay, that's like way too many pieces for me to even attempt to sew together. So what I'm going to do instead is I know what should be sewn together. I'm going to select everything out here and then sew it back inside of the UV editor. So if I go to my front view, I go to edges, and I just grab everything here, everything there, and then everything down this middle row. If I didn't have that stripe, this would obviously be only one selection here. Yep. That gives me every edge that's vertical that would then be sewn together. Okay? Now if I sew it just like it is, what's going to happen is it's going to sew all of the seams together and they'll be overlapping each other. So then we're back to having this cube that's not flat, it's just like this. It's like squish. I need to lay it out flat. So then what I'm going to do is just find an arbitrary edge and just deselect it. Okay, so I just deselected this edge right here. For each one of my separate shapes, I need to do that. So that's one separate shape. This on the inside is another separate shape, so I'm going to hide or do it to that one. I believe this box is another separate shape. Okay, and by separate shape, I just mean that when I did the separate, it broke it off into separate pieces. You'll kind of see what yours is doing. So now if I go in here to the UV editor, I go to Move and Sew. It does that. And then if I grab all of my shells and then I unfold it, and then I orient it, and then I lay it out, my UVs are now laid out. Okay? So I'll show it again so you can see it on a different piece. And this time I'll just grab just one piece. Okay, it works with one piece, it works with a million pieces. This is all one solid piece here. Okay, this connects to this wall, connects to that wall, connects to here, all the way around. If I automatic map it, I go and grab the edges. I need to grab just the vertical ones. If I can do it in the side view or whatever, but it can also do it here. If I shift, double click the next one, it will ring select it all the way around. Then I just deselect one of these, move and sew. Should give me one straight line after I unfold it. And then I can orient, and then I could lay out. And there it is. Okay, it's that simple to lay out the walls. Now, it's obviously going to be a lot of, for something like this, it's a lot of UVs. It's a lot of different pieces here. And then because they're so long, they're going to be also very short. So what I should do is go into this and try to find areas where maybe the UVs don't need to line up perfectly from one to the other. If we look at this seam right here, those don't line up perfectly. So if you go to like the corner of your room, the seams don't have to line up. So I can basically cut it at any one of the corners, and that will give me a good spot to break it apart. So I don't have, I don't need to do it everywhere, but let's say here I did one, and then in this room, maybe I'll do this one here, and then do one there, do one there. I'm just kind of arbitrarily picking a spot. Okay, then I jump back into this, I cut it, And then I can look at the pieces and see if I like the amount of pieces that I have here. That seems like an appropriate amount. This piece probably goes on top of that one. That would make more sense. There we go. And now that these are smaller pieces, when I unfold them and then I lay them out, they'll be bigger pieces. So now they'll fit a lot nicer, okay? Now I have to keep in mind what my texture is going to be for this. Most likely I'm going to do brick. These pieces are going up and down. They should be going left and right because my brick would go left and right. So it makes sense if I find a picture, it goes the same direction. So I'm going to rotate all of these. Rotate shell, clockwise, sure. I'm going to make this huge so I can see it, and I'm going to turn my checker map on so that I can verify that it's going the correct direction. So I should make sure that all of my numbering on here is facing the correct way. So I can see all the numbers and letters are facing upright. If they were upside down like that, then any texture I brought in would come in upside down. Not a huge deal, but something I want to be aware of, obviously. So I'm going to keep it like that. And, oops, come on. I'm going to relay this out. I didn't rotate it back. I need to rotate it back. Nope, it's thinking. While it's thinking, I'm going to grab a texture for it. So the last one that I showed, we went into Photoshop and kind of built a texture out of that, right? I'm going to go to textures.com and find a brick texture. So something like this could work. Something like that obviously wouldn't work for a wall. That wouldn't work for an interior wall. This could work for an interior wall. If we can find something that's seamless, that's going to be better because then we can copy it over and over and over again. This one is also seamless. These two are not seamless. So if I were to take this and put this on my wall and duplicate it, I would basically have a line, a distinct line wherever they duplicated, wherever one tiled next to the other one, tiled next to the other one. Here, if I go to my seamless preview, no matter how far I zoom out, you'll never see a distinct line. It's obvious, right? It's right here where this dark line is and where that line is. That's where it's kind of looping. But it's a lot less noticeable than it would be on the other ones, okay? I could take one of these files, bring it into Photoshop, clean it up so that it is seamless, and then use that. I don't like to do extra work, so I'm not going to. I'm going to use this one. I'm going to say download that. There's my texture. And I'm going to save this into the P drive, 2520, environment, source images. Raw textures. Okay, there we go. So now this is all laid out. Somehow I got an extra one here. I don't know what that is. Something I must have selected. All right, orient. Okay. Now if I had, let's say in this specific scene, I had this. I bring that into Unreal. I've wasted a lot of texture space up here. Okay, so you always want to maximize your texture space as best you can. So imagining that we're also bringing in, let's say, the ceiling and the flooring for this. I'm going to go to Mesh Tools, Create Polygons, and I'm just going to hold down the V key and click the corner here. Hold down V. I lost where the end of this was. All right, let me just isolate that one item. There we go. All right, so I'm going to hold down V, click here, hold down V still, click there. Still holding V. Still holding V. There we go. So now I have the ceiling all set up. Now I can center pivot it, duplicate it, move it down to the bottom for the floor. Notice how there's gray on this side and black on that side. When I bring this into Unreal, if it's black on that side, it's going to be see-through. I have to flip the normals or flip the whole thing. Mesh display reverse. Now it's good. Okay, so now I can take these two items, unfold them. Guess that was already unfolded. Orient them, yes. Why would you go like whatever? All right, which direction is up and down, left and right? It doesn't matter with this, it's flat. Okay, so I'm just going to leave it like that. I'm going to grab all these pieces. I'm going to go to my layout and say layout. When I do my big area, I break it up into chunks because I don't want to have the same, I don't want to have to shrink all my UVs to fit in one square. It's not enough data for me to do that, okay? So I break it off into chunks of what I can do. Sometimes I'll break it off into interior walls and exterior walls. So like this wall here is a brick wall, so that would be like say one set. That wall is a painted wall, that would be one set, okay? Usually I keep it as simple as I can make it. All right, so that looks pretty good. The UVs look like they're all lined up. They don't look like they're the same size though. Let's double check my layout settings and make sure that everything is set here. That, yes. All right, let's double check our freeze transformations and make sure everything is freeze transformed. Let's double check our unfolding, yes. Let's double check our layout. All right, so it is good. Let me just see what this is. So this piece here, I'm just going to put it up in this area. It makes more sense for things to be closer together. Oops, you went on the wrong screen. And it also makes my sanity a little bit better if these things are all even. So if I grab this one and grid snap it, and grab this one and grid snap it, now they're level. And I can give them a little bit of room. They don't need to be right on top of each other. There we go. Cool. All right, so now this area, then I can take and export this out. Oops, I don't want to export it yet, sorry. I need to assign some materials to this so that Unreal makes it a little bit easier. So I'll assign a new Lambert to this one. This will be called flooring carpet. Okay, I may have flooring tile, flooring whatever, wood planks. Ceiling, let's assign a material to this. Lambert, ceiling, tiles, white. It's always better to be safe than sorry with that. New material here, walls, brick. Okay. So I could set up all my materials inside here, textures, whatever. I'm going to do it inside Unreal, just so you can see that process. So now I'll use my game exporter. It's going to bring it into that models folder. I'm going to call this building parts. It doesn't matter what I call it. Export. Okay, so going into this, I have this brick texture I'm going to use. I'm also going to need a carpet texture. That one should be good. Again, trying to find something that's seamless is going to be more beneficial. If you have the funding, signing up for this and getting some of the premium textures is definitely worth it. You'll find that these are pretty limited as to what we can do with them. Raw textures, carpet, yes, it's good. And then what else will we need? Ceiling. There we go. seamless one. Good. Yes, so I'm going to import all my stuff. So now under my models, I should have that. Building parts poly surface. There's another building parts poly surface. I don't know what it exported out. Let's try that again. Oh, what happened was I wasn't at the origin. So when I model anything, remember I said last time it has to be brought to the origin? It wasn't. So I'm just going to combine all this stuff. I'm going to set my pivot, zoom in on the grid, and then use my middle mouse button with X to bring that over there. All right. Now we'll delete history, we'll freeze transform, we'll export this out again. And that's why we have this, because we can just say export yes, and then everything exports out, then import. There we go. So now we have this, which is our ground and our room. And if we go inside, we can then see the ceiling. That's what we should have. Good. And I can delete these other two. Those don't exist anymore, so we can delete that. That's my old one. I don't need that at the moment. Okay, so building parts. So as I imported that, I should have gotten 3 textures here. This one, which is my material, yes, yes. I don't know what that is. Nope. It should have brought in my other materials there unless I didn't export them. Settings, animation, binary. Everything is set. Let me set it to 2014-15, and we'll see if it likes that better. World material, world material. Nope, it's fine. So it didn't bring in the materials for whatever reason this time, but it's fine, they're still separated. So as I click this highlight, I can see what is what on each one. Okay. So I'm going to jump back to here, and I'm just going to build my materials. So I right click, I go to materials, and I'm going to call this M underscore ceiling tiles white. Now if I double click it, I can bring in my materials and start populating what this is going to look like. So I need to make sure they're in the right folder. So geometry, structure, textures. Oops, I didn't want that. Environment. Raw textures. So I'm just going to copy these and put those into my folder. So RST building, content, geometry, structure, textures, paste. Now it should ask me if I want to import. There it goes. Okay, so this is the ceiling. So I'm going to go to concrete and drop it in. I don't know why it came up as concrete. It looks just like the whatever tile. I'm just going to drop the color onto base color, and that gives me that look. And I can also drop, let's say, the red onto nope, I need to add a bump here. Pixel normal, vertex normal, material blend. To normal. No, I think I'm just going to leave it the way it is. Let's leave it like that. All right, so I'm going to leave it like that for now, and then I'm going to save this. And then I'm going to go back to my geometry. Geometry, structure, mesh, building parts. Okay, so this is my floor, this one is my room, this is my ceiling. So I'm going to click on this here and find my ceiling. So it should be under M underscore ceiling tiles white. Okay, so now this gets a full texture over the entire thing. Okay, so what I need to do is incorporate a way to tile this inside there. So now if I double click this, now I have my material that I could then tweak what this looks like. So any of the stuff that we do for texturing and stuff, the cool thing about Unreal is that if you look at Unreal node tile texture, a lot of times you only need to watch a video on it. If you simply just watch or look at the images here, you can kind of get an idea of what it's doing. So if I jump back to this, you can see there's a UV and texture. What they've done is added this texture coordinates to it, to the UV, and that's what's going to tell it how many times to loop. So if I hit tab, or sorry, right click, wrong program, and type in coord, and then I just drag this to the UV, now I can say that I want to repeat this, let's say 20 and 20 times. And so now it's going to repeat the texture coordinates 20 and 20 times. Yep. And then I will hit save. I will go back to my other one. And there you go. So now it's repeating 20 and 20 times. So now I can go back to this and just make this, let's say, 50 and 50 times. So that way I don't have to worry about going into Photoshop, making a texture that's that big, and then bringing that into here. I can bring a small texture in and repeat it a million times, and then I'll just have this. Now if I wanted this to have, like you can see here, the lines that go around this, let me jump into Photoshop. I thought I had that open already. Apparently not. And what I'm going to do is build a texture off of this that incorporates all of that stuff. I'm basically going to build one of these tiles. As this is going to be something that is duplicated over and over and over again, as I draw out where that tile is, I'm going to basically cut that line in half of where that bar is. That way when it tiles, it'll also tile that bar. They don't have to be crazy complex. We don't get crazy close to it. Sometimes you can find the texture already there. Sometimes you just have to make it. So I'm going to make a new material, or a new file. Because I believe this picture also, if we look at it, carpet, concrete. This is not perfectly square, and in order for this to be tiled correctly, it should be square. So I'm going to make a new image, let's say 512 by 512. I am limited to the size of this, so it makes not a huge difference if I go bigger than this image. I guess this is bigger than I thought. 1024 by 726. All right, so I'm going to go 768 by 768. That's pretty close to 712, which was the highest number. Then I'm going to drag this in here. I'm going to scale it up so that it fits. And then I'm going to select that, go to expand. Oops, I meant contract, wrong one. Modify contract, let's say 100 pixels. Why aren't you contracting? It doesn't like me. Fine, I'll just do transform selection, and I'll just do it myself. There we go. All right, so now I'm going to inverse this. I'm going to make a new layer. Those are white/beige. I'm just going to eyedrop a color here and then fill it. Okay, so it might be hard to see, but you can see that line that goes around it now and that. I'll also maybe give this a little bit of a drop shadow, just so we feel a little bit more depth there. That's not drop shadow. That's drop shadow. There we go. So let's take the distance in a little bit. Let's take the size down a little bit. There we go. So that feels like it has a little bit of depth, a little bit of thickness. Okay. So now I will save this as. I'm going to save it as a JPEG, and I'm going to save it into this folder as carpet, stucco, ceiling tile. All right, it should ask me, do you want to import? I'll say yes. And then I'm just going to scoot that over, go back to this. Here's my ceiling tile. I'll drop that in here. And now it's simply a matter of just connecting the right one to the right one. So this will be connected to the UVs, this will be connected to base color, and this one will just go away. So now when I save it, and then go and look at this ceiling again, you'll see now I have actual like ceiling tiles there. Okay, and if I want more, I just come back to that texture coordinates, make it 100, save it. And now we'll have obviously a lot more of those. Okay, so that's the kind of thought process you want to take into these. All right, so let's close the ceiling tiles. We don't need those for now. All right, the next one I have is the walls. So I'm going to go here to textures, and in this I can just create a new material right away. So I don't have to create it and then edit it and add it. I can just assign a new material. Structure, textures. And this will be called m_walls brick. Now I can double click it. It brings me into this window, and then I can start importing stuff and then assigning it. So here's my brick. Drag this onto base color. And now I have my brick texture. Now I could also take that off. Put this into my normal. And nope. It's not going to go in normal because it's not a normal map. I think that's the one I want. Nope. Again, we come here. Bump. Yeah, I was right initially. That's why I second guessed myself. So I'm going to take this texture, I'm going to do a bump offset. how do they have it connected? It goes into height and undeformed UVs. Error. Let's try that again. We can find other ones too. I know that should have worked. Bump offset, yes. Fine. Let's go here anyway. Normal. Nope. So here's some other ones. We're just going to grab a different one that has a normal map built in. So those ones are free on this site. There we go. So I'm going to download all of these. Yes, I know. All right, so I'm going to delete these textures out of here because I want to bring in those ones that I just imported. All right, so all these brick wall ones, I'm going to drag in. So this is the color. This one is, let me open this up. The displacement, I don't even need that. Set that aside. This one is the occlusion. I don't think there's anything even on that, is there? Yes, barely something on there. Okay, so I'll hook this up to occlusion. This one is the roughness and specular. And then this one is the normal. So now if I hit save, I close it, you can see the brick that's on there. Okay. Now because of how that texture, the UVs are so small, this texture is huge. I need to do that same thing that I did before. I can delete that one. Where I have that UV texture thing. Let me just organize these so they're all laid out. So we'll go to texture coordinates, and I'm going to drag this onto each one. I don't need to have a new one for each of these. I can use this same one in each one of those. And so now this can be, let's say, 30 and 30. I'll need more for sure. No, actually 30 and 30 is pretty good. Okay, now if I don't want the brick color there, I can simply just disconnect it. So if I hold Control and click on it, the brick color is gone. It needs something there, but right now it's black. So I'm going to click on this and type in 3. Trying to find where it is in here so you can see it. There it is, constant 3 vector. So this is red, green, blue, so it's 3 values. This is 3 values, 1, 2, 3. So now if I drag this onto base color, then come over here and give it a color, I'll go crazy at first so we can see it. There we go. So I have pink bricks. I'll save it. We'll jump back into the preview area. And you can see now the bricks are pink. Obviously not the good enough color for us, but you get the idea with that. So let's go here, let's go to that. And this is kind of like if the bricks were painted, this is what it would look like. go. Cool. So we can close that one. And then we'll go to the carpeting. So we go to this, we go to new, underscore carpeting. And then you'll see the process is very similar from one to the next to the next. It's just simply a matter of dragging the stuff in there and then assigning it to that base color. And then if we need to repeat it, we add the coordinates. Save it, preview it. And now we have carpeting. Really thick carpeting. Let's take that back more, 60 and 60. Cool. Okay. I'm really not liking the brick on here. I think I kind of lost something on there, so I want to adjust that some more. So let's go back to walls. And instead of me just like getting rid of the brick texture altogether, what I'm going to do is I'm going to mix the brick texture with this. Okay. So if I right click, these are all different things that you can do as far as mixing these things together. So one of them is color, one of them is blends. Maybe I want to play with any one of these. Let's say that I did an overlay. Okay. So the way it works, if you look at it, there's a base color, there's a blend color, and then the result. So like this is going to go into here, this is going to go into there, and then the result of that would go into the base color. So imagine Photoshop, you have two layers stacked on top of each other. One of them is set to overlay. That's what it's doing here, is it's overlaying those two things. Now I can jump back to this and just play with how this is overlaying. So maybe I'll knock this down some. I really don't like that it's looking at all. All right, maybe not an overlay would work. Let's try something else here. Let's do a desaturation. Drop that in. Okay, so this is desaturation. Looks like I desaturated it pretty good, so we'll just save that. Go back to this. Nope, it's not desaturated at all. All right, so I'm going to hit 1 and click, and this will allow me to bring in just a number here. And if I drag this number to the fraction, now I can type in 0.125 or 0 or 5. Yeah, or 1. Now why it's not updating yet, we'll find out. Come on. Oh, I was on highlight mode. That might have been why it looked so weird. Let's try that again. Let's go to 3, click here, drag this. I just want to see what it looks like with that solid color. I had it on highlighting, so it was showing me the highlighted color, not the end result. Yeah, I think I do like it with that desaturated look. I'm going to go to multiply. And I'm just going to put these two values in here and then put that there. That's another way I can mix the colors together so I still get the brick, but now I've tinted the brick a little bit. So again, it would look like it's painted versus just being a regular color. That looks better. All right, cool. I'm going to go back to my collisions in here because obviously this needs to have some collision stuff set up. Oops. Use complex as simple. Save this, close it, close it. So now here is my brick area all set up. All right, so make sure I can get to it. Nope, way too high. Let's bring it down. There we go. So now we've added a lot more life to our scene just by adding some basic colors to it. You can see the carpeting, unless we were super close to it, doesn't really look crazy like carpeting, but it's fine. We just need to make it look like it is, right? Like there is something there. And then obviously we can adjust it so that we can get better results on those things. Inside Maya, as I'm doing all of my texturing and kind of setting up what gets what, if I just grab different faces and assign different materials to it, I can make one material for the inside of a room, another material for the outside of the room, okay? Just by assigning different materials through this. Any one of these items too, going through Substance, we can do the same kind of process. So in here, I can lay out as many textures, materials, shaders as I want. The only difference is going to be how we export it out. So I'm not going to pay too much attention to the starting up process of this. I'm just going to go to an older project so you can see it. Close this. It's thinking. All right, so let's say I want to bring the robot into Unreal. Here's all the materials for it. It's thinking still again. I hit M. There it goes. Okay. So when I go to export this out, I go to export textures. And instead of picking Arnold from the list, I would go and find Unreal. Unreal 4. There we go. And then what this is going to do is it's going to export out the base color, occlusion, roughness, metallic, normal, and emissive. Actually, let me export my other one out. My water wheel pieces. The robot is very high resolution. I don't want to bring him in Unreal. I'd rather bring my low-res water wheel in. Come on. I'll close windows while I'm waiting. This is the perfect opportunity to do that. All right, you're taking forever. While that's thinking, if we'll open it up or not. I may just want to build something quick that I could just bring in. I was definitely thinking because it's slowing my rest of the station down. My water wheel should not be this big. The robot was, I think, bigger. That was definitely taking its time. Let's close that. So there's my room. Let's see. This. So I'm just going to build just a quick object here, I guess, because that's taking a lot longer. Bring this side in. Bring this side in. There we go. So it's kind of like a recycle bin, right? I'm going to extrude this inward. Extrude that down. And then just close off that piece. Now, maybe because it's a little bit more of a item we might see a little bit closer, I'm going to add a little bit more detail to it. So I'll pull these faces out some. All right, double check my size. That should be good. Maybe just a little bit more inward here. And the same thing there. Maybe just push that in some. All right, so there's my bin. I'm going to do automatic mapping. After I freeze my transforms, there we go. Do that again. And then looking at the pieces, it's just a matter of how everything's going to connect. So there's not that many pieces here, so I can basically just start grabbing stuff and moving and sewing it. And you can kind of see how everything's already fitting together. Some of these I'm probably not going to be able to attach just because of how they're set up. So I'll have some obviously separated pieces, but I think overall I should be able to get it pretty-ish low. No. So this piece here, I'm not going to attach to anything because if I do, it basically looks like it wants to attach to that. I don't want that to be attached to anything over there. Same thing on this side, nothing there would be attached. Okay, that one's fine. No. Yes, that's fine. Okay, I can't attach this one because it'll attach to that side. This one wants to attach there, so that's as small as I can get. Okay. So now I'm going to unfold it. Everything should be unfolded already. I should go to Layout. And if I had another item in the scene, maybe I had recycle bin and I had a garbage can, or 10 recycle bins that are all different. Or I had one that's for pop cans, one that's for regular stuff. You know, I put all these things together. All right. All right, so the process would be the same. You modeled something, you exported it out, you bring it into Substance Painter, if this is the way you want to take this project into Substance, versus going into Photoshop, versus just doing it right inside of Unreal. You have your item, so I'm going to export the textures out of this. I'm going to set this to Unreal 4. We don't need SSS, just regular 4. Water wheel 001 base color, that's fine. I'm going to set this to be JPEGs. There they are. I'm going to set this to be, well, for the water wheel it's kind of a big item, so maybe I'll use 1024 for this. And I'll let it export to my weapon area here. Environment, RST, content, materials, textures. There we go. Then we'll say export. And just so I have it there, I'm also going to export my model out. I have the model already, but I'm already exporting stuff, so why not just export everything from the same spot? So here, meshes, water wheel object. Okay. So this says, do you want to import? And of course I want to import my stuff. Now it's going to bring in the textures and it's going to bring in the model. There we go. The way that the model is going to come in is the same way that the models came in for everything else. The textures are set up a bit different though. When we went from, okay, the mesh is super tiny, so it's giving me a bunch of error messages saying the mesh is super tiny. Just hit OK on this. I may have to re-export the mesh out just because it's so tiny. Geometry, mesh. Yep, there's all my pieces for the water wheel. That's what I expected it to do. It's fine. Yes, delete all those. Let me just jump back to Maya. I'm going to open my water wheel and then re-export it out. Yeah, let's hope not. Simple machine, scenes, nope. Water wheel. All right, there's my water wheel go. Export mesh. Meshes. Oh, it deleted it. That's right. Okay. So I'm just trying to re-import it with the exact one that I used. I don't remember where the exact one is I used, so I'm just going to take the one from Substance, combine everything into one piece, delete all the history, and then FBX export this out. Come on. All right. Okay. So now I should be able to go into here and say, don't import. And I'm going to import the specific one that I want, which should be inside the water wheel folder, the FBX. There we go. Okay, it'll still give me the error probably that it's too tiny. That's fine. Yep. I'm going to double click it. We'll see that it's too tiny. It's right there. It's adorable. I can't do anything about the scale inside here. As I brought it in, there was an option, change the scale, whatever. I didn't do that. It's not, like I said, it's not a big deal because we're not using this specific item. So I'm going to assign a new material to this under my materials, and then M underscore water wheel. Okay, so now I'm going to assign my material, my textures that I got from Unreal, or from Substance. Materials, textures, water wheel, there we go. And you'll see that it only exports out 3 of them, and you'll see why it does that. Okay, the main reason is that it's trying to save on disk space. Okay, so our color is RGB, right? So I just drag this to base color, and that should change that. This is our normal map. The normal map will always be this kind of bluish color, so I drag this to normal. And then we have this funky one here. Remember when we did Arnold stuff, we had metallic, roughness, and those are the only 2 that we needed. Metallic and roughness, those 2 were like 0 to 1 sliders, okay? So instead of us getting 2 different files for that, it saves one of those in the red channel, one of those in the green channel, okay? So if I click on this and I go to what it called it, you'll see that it calls it occlusion, roughness, metallic. And what that means is that the red is the occlusion, the green is the roughness, and the blue is the metallic. So that way we have only 3 files we brought in, but those 3 files store all that information. And so now when I hit save and then I go to see the water wheel, there's all that material on the water wheel exactly as we had it inside there. Okay? So that's the only difference from going from Substance into here as opposed to Photoshop into here, is that we have this guy, which is a little bit different. Okay? Everything else as far as how we assign these is the same thing. Save that. And then if I go in here and I drop my water wheel on the scene, geometry, structures, models. Where'd you go? There it is, meshes. Now he's super tiny, and then I can go into scale and scale him up. And this is, like I said, one of the neat things about Unreal is like anything we build, we can make it interactive. And this is barely touching the surface of what we can do with the interactivity of this. We're just walking around right now, but we could have these things actually move around. As he gets closer to this, that whole thing could animate and start spinning. We could take this and put this as an app on our phone and allow someone else to look at it and interact with it, spin it around, whatever. Any of these things we're doing, even though it's for a game, we could actually upload it to Sketchfab, and we can have our model on Sketchfab that we then spin around. The concept's still the same. We still need to create a low resolution version of our creature, or whatever it is, our environment. And once we have that, this whole process inside here goes a lot quicker. Putting it on your phone goes a lot quicker as far as how it operates. This is a pretty dense scene. There we go. And if I'm trying to get a job doing this kind of stuff, 3D modeling, environments, whatever it is, this is how I want to show it off. I don't want to show it off as, you know, just a couple still images in my portfolio. I want to show it off so they can interact with it. So they can see how well the, there's post-processing, no post-processing. There's my base color, there's the metalness, there's roughness, there's the bump. There's the UVs for it. That's how I want to show it off, is through something like that. It's amazing stuff. Okay, so as you're building things, just stuff to keep in mind. I didn't want to close InDesign.